All right, here we are, week 3, Wednesday lecture, and we're talking about the writing assignments, and we're looking at the week 3 resource page B, where it's covering the specific letter format for the writing assignments here. So what I'm going to be covering are the items down here, the 7 letter parts in the block format. If we have time, there's a writing assignment rubric also listed here. You can click on that link and see how there's deductions assigned to the writing assignment. So let's start with talking about the 7 letter parts. And yes, we're writing letters. That's how the course outline of record is set up. And obviously, most of your communication from a business perspective is going to be done with email or live presentation, social media, text messages. The process of going through the formal structure of writing a letter is important so you can get this kind of formal structure down, especially when you're dealing with clients and you know what these letter parts are. People are still writing letters in business. There was a time when we had these things, those of you who are history buffs might have heard of these. They're called envelopes. And people would take printed letters and fold them and put them in these things called envelopes. And then they would seal the envelope and put this other antiquated thing on it called a stamp. And they would put it in this thing called the post office box, and they would mail it to somebody. All right, I'm jesting, but tough crowd today. So we're going to learn this format. So first off, I want to share the 7 letter parts. I should have already. And I'm going to share this view with you. Can you guys see this? Hit me in the chat. I just want to make sure because I'm talking to a screen. Okay, Boomer. Thanks, Derek. Yes. All right. So you're seeing this. That's good. All right. So, and we'll look at a sample here in a second, but these are the 7 letter parts. The way you make sure you don't lose points on these letters is twofold. First fold, make sure you always have the 7 letter parts when you're writing a letter for these assignments. And you have 3. You have the bad news message next week, you have the persuasive message the week after that, and then you have your resume cover letter the week after that. These are all letter format. They're all 60-point assignments. So you'll have the heading, which is the return address of you as the sender. So that's your physical address. If it's on company letterhead, like if you're at work and you're using the official company letterhead, it's going to be that logo and what we call a masthead at the top of the letter. So that's your address. So for your writing assignments, you're just going to have your physical address. Or if you don't want to share your physical address, you can make up an address. That's going to be the very top left line, left aligned at the very top left of your letter. That's the first thing, your address, AKA heading. Then you have a space, and then you have the date. In business letters, the date is always spelled out. So today is November 4th. We would actually write November 4, 2020. It would not be 11/4/2020. Spell out the date. You have another space. Then you have the inside address. The inside address is who you're mailing the letter to. So that's the client or the customer that you're delivering the letter to. So that's their address. Then you have the salutation, dear Mr., dear Ms. If you don't know if someone is, a female is married or not, you address her as Ms. Sending me a letter, be dear Mr. Sharf, right? So that's the salutation. And then you have the body of the letter. This is where you get into your paragraphs. And you're going to have at least 3 paragraphs for your written messages. Open, body, close. And for this bad news message, which we'll dive into more on Monday, you'll have 4 paragraphs. Business letters are short and concise. So these letters that you're writing are typically just going to be 1 page, very short paragraphs, sometimes even a single sentence paragraph. The body section, which is the paragraphs of your letter, is that's where you're writing the specific letter format that you're delivering. So in this case, next week, it's the bad news message, and you're following the bad news format. We're covering that next week. Just know the body is where you cover the specific writing assignment. Then you have your close, your sincerely, your warmest regards, cordially, respectfully. You can change the tone of the letter a little bit based on the closing. Then you have your signature block. So sincerely, space, Nate Scharf, 3 spaces, uh, Professor Miracosta College. So it's name and title, name and title. That's the signature block. So that's the 7 parts of the letter. So when you're doing your assignments, you know, okay, I always need these 7 letter parts. So I'm going to, am I lagging a little bit on the audio? I saw myself freeze up there for a second. Is the audio still okay? Hit me in the chat. The audio is still okay. All right. Thank you, Ennis. So that's the 7 letter parts. Okay. So, all right. So we know we have to have that in every letter. The other thing we need to do is we need to write these letters in block format. Business letters are super clean and boring in their formatting. Okay. So we're always going to write in the block format. Block format just means, and I'm highlighting that right now in the week 3 part B resource page. Block format is simply everything's left aligned. Let me see if this is the right. There we go. I'm displaying this for you right now. So here's a sample letter. Don't look at all the little notations here, but just for now, notice everything is left aligned. Everything's left aligned, and there's a single space between each paragraph. So you're writing with single spaces, single line. It's not 1.5 spacing. It's not 2 spacing. It's single spacing for each line of your letter with a space between each paragraph. And we have the 7 letter parts here. So just to tick off the 7 letter parts real quickly, you have the masthead. That's the return address. Then you have the date spelled out. And then you have the inside address, the address you're sending the letter to. And then you have the salutation space. Then you have the body of the letter. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. The body is 5. Then 6, we have our close, sincerely, warmest regards. 7, name and title, AKA signature block. Now this sample, and I apologize, this is the best example I could find at this point, also has reference initials. You don't need to include those. And in fact, please do not include those in your writing assignments for this class. That is, if somebody else typed this letter on behalf of somebody else, there'd be reference initials. So it's from Luther Crosby, written by JM. So that's the block format. So what you want to remember is no indents. No indents, keep everything left aligned, single space, space between paragraphs. The one exception here is the masthead, stylized. You don't need to do a stylized masthead for your letters. Just go ahead and you can have your return address left aligned up at the top, good to go. All right, so let me stop there for a second and see if there are any questions in the chat on this. Still a little quiet, I'm hearing. I've got my audio all the way up, talking right into this thing, so hopefully it's working. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and peel off my head earbuds and just go straight. You might hear some dogs barking, but such is life. Can you hear me now? Hit me with the reaction on the, okay, good, awesome. Okay, that's better, good. Sorry for the tech stuff, we're all navigating, right? Okay, so that's the letter parts, that's the block format. If you're successful with those 2 things, all you really have to focus on at that point is making sure you're writing in the specific format. So for example, next week you have your first writing assignment, it's a bad news message. Bad news message has 4 parts. The first paragraph is going to be what we call a buffer. Your second paragraph is going to have reasons, and then the bad news. Your third paragraph is going to have an alternate solution. And your fourth paragraph is going to have a positive close with no contact information. That's week 4 stuff, my friends. We're in week 3, but you can go look at that. And there's a sample in week 4, and we're going to practice some samples next week in your groups. So you should feel pretty good about being able to write your bad news message next week. You got your letter parts, you know it's in block format, and then you know the body of the letter is whatever specific writing prompt you're addressing. Let me just look at the rubric real quick. I'm going to pull that up. So these are 60-point assignments. So our point values are going up starting next week. You know that you need the 7 parts of the letter. Those are listed here. You know it needs to be in block format, left aligned, single space between paragraphs. What I'm showing you here is block format. See, it's single space with a space between each paragraph. That's block format. No indents. Please burn this into your brain. No indents on your business letter. So let me talk about the major point deductions. 60 points minus 5 points for each one of these mistakes. If you're missing one of the 7 letter parts, perhaps you forgot the return address and the date. That's 2 pieces of the 7 pieces of the letter missing. That'd be minus 10 points. So make sure you have the 7 letter parts. Then the second piece is, did you follow the specific order? So these writing assignments in this BizCom class are pretty prescriptive. It's not like an English class where, you know, you get to be verbose and creative. Business is like, okay, bad news message, I'm going to crank this out in like 6 minutes and send it. So the goal is that when you have some of these, the main formats down, bad news, persuasive, then when you are faced with these scenarios, the most common business writing scenarios, you can crank these out pretty quickly. So make sure you have the letter parts, make sure you're following the specific format. Anything missed there, like if you had the bad news letter and you didn't have a buffer in your opening paragraph, that would be minus 5. So these 2 are what you really want to focus on. Other than that, it's little ticky-tack deductions. If you have spelling errors, make sure you proof your work. Punctuation errors, grammar, sentence structure, or spacing errors, like if you had too many spaces between a paragraph or no spaces between a paragraph. Those are minus 2.5 each. So I've noticed, I keep updating this rubric in the first 8-week session that I had this semester with this updated rubric and my expanded resource page with the samples and everything. Students did a lot better. So, you know, I have a 60 points last year and last semester. They were getting like 40s on this assignment, and my first 8-weeker in this fall, folks were getting 50, 55, and 60, almost all the points. So that's good. So you should have what you need here. I'm going to pause there, and you can either chat me. I'm going to stop sharing. You can chat me, or you can go ahead and audio if you have a question on the writing assignments thus far. Again, we'll cover these in more detail next week. We're going to go into the bad news message in great detail next Monday, so make sure you're here for Monday. Preguntas. Hit me with the reaction button, thumbs up if it's making sense so far. Beautiful. Okay. All right, my friends. Well, let's then, we're almost at 12. I'm going to check my timing here real quick just to make sure we're pacing. Oh, I can't do that. I'm still recording. So I'm going to stop recording for a second.